Kumis says that humans naturally desire certainty, and it can be overwhelming to live in a world where nothing is for certain. The story Kumis tells of Sisyphus would seem like a miserable one. After angering and lying to the gods, Sisyphus was banished to the underworld to push a heavy boulder up a mountain just to watch it roll all the way back down to the bottom. Sisyphus would then have to walk down and push the boulder up again, repeating the cycle for eternity. Sisyphus and his boulder represent every human struggling to live in this absurd world. The task of pushing his boulder up the hill repeatedly is representative of the mechanical life humans lead. It speaks of a life of repetitive labor where the goal isn't always known. Kumis says that Sisyphus does not give in to suicide, rather he accepts his fate and does his work. Although Sisyphus is tied to his boulder, much like humanity is tied to an absurd universe, he persists. He is stronger than his rock. Mankind must be stronger than their struggle and persist as well. Kumis states that although suicide would be the only way to achieve certainty, one must not give in to that option. Humans must persist always. Kumis tells his readers that it is a hard thing to live with the absurd, but if you accept it and revolt, you will instead find freedom and passion, and you will be able to keep going without giving in to suicide. Kumis encourages his readers to persist and live for the moments, even if the moments seem meaningless and redundant at times. In Kumis's essay, revolt is the first consequence of living with the absurd. Kumis's revolt refers to not giving in to the certainty that is suicide and persisting in a life that is uncertain and against human nature. The absurd man must revolt and overcome the feelings of so much uncertainty around him. Kumis says that instead of trying to fight the absurd, that is, the world, one should simply accept it and then revolt. He says that people should stare it in the face and fight against it, even though we know all life will certainly end in an impending death. Although moving forward and living one more day leads one closer and closer to the end, one must do as Sisyphus did and not give in. One must move forward towards their fate like Sisyphus, continuing to roll the boulder up the hill. One must revolt against taking the easy way out with suicide and continue on finding happiness in a world that goes against everything humans naturally desire. By revolting, Kumis means not to let the uncertainty of life overcome you. He encourages his readers to seize the day and fight against the desire to give in and revolt against it by continuing on. Next, Kumis says that freedom is the second way to persist in an absurd world. Kumis uses the example of Sisyphus because although Sisyphus does not have freedom to do as he wishes, he does have the freedom to think and feel as he desires. Inner freedom is the true freedom. Inner freedom allows the absurd man to think and react how he chooses. According to Kumis, the absurd man does not worry about the future. He does not set goals or try to fit into a role. Therefore, he does not worry about his actions. He is able to take in more of each moment as it passes and process it for what it actually is, rather than trying to act in a way that will allow him to succeed in the future. The absurd man thinks and feels exactly as he wishes without inhibition. He has no consequences, and having no consequences means he does not need to worry about or justify his feelings and actions. Kumis says that the absurd man gets to experience more and live a fuller life. The absurd man has no worry for the quantity of his life, but rather the quality of it. A shorter, fully lived life is better than a long life with little quality. The more a person accepts the absurd, the more he will get to live a full life without worry of consequence. Kumis's third consequence is passion. Kumis's passion for life is like the saying, carpe diem. To Kumis, passion means accepting the absurd and living in the present by doing what creates the most happiness in this uncertain life. Like the consequence of freedom, living passionately allows one to live in the now, without worrying about how this will affect them later. Cumis believed that a life well lived is a life lived with passion. A life lived means finding happiness in experiences. According to Cumis, rejecting the notion of suicide and accepting the absurd is the only way for humans to persist in such an uncertain universe.